Alrighty guys, so it's Kristen, welcome back to my channel, and today we are going to be going over my best and worst books of 2023. And I thought that it would be really fun to start off with my stats from 2023 because I mentioned in my TBR video that my friend Katie got me hooked on Storygraph, which is an app that can track your books that you're reading, like Goodreads. However, you can now do in between star ratings if you use Storygraph instead, and you can import all of your Goodreads to Storygraph. But it also gives you stats like what were your most read genres, what was your longest book you read, etc., etc., etc. So I thought that it would be fun to kind of go over the stats of my 2023 before I got into the books that I liked most and least of this year. So, starting off, we're going to look at our mood. It seems like the most that I like to read are adventurous books, which kind of makes sense because I really like fantasy books. And a lot of fantasy books are, of course, very adventurous in terms of their, like, plot points, I guess. And then the next biggest one, it looks like, is mysterious, which makes sense because I read a lot of murder mysteries in the past year. Looks like most of the books that I read are fast-paced and medium-paced, and a majority of my books are between 300 to 500 pages, and then upwards of 500 pages. Looks like my most read genres are fantasy, which of course does not surprise me at all. I don't think it surprises anyone who's been watching my channel this last year. And then next is young adult and middle grade romance, thriller, mystery. And then, some other smatterings of things, which I think are just additional plot points to like main books. So nothing too crazy on the list of books here so far. My most read author was Angie Sage, and then Chris DeLacy and Aaron Hunter. But all of the people that are on my most read authors is because I was reading their series, so it's not like I read a bunch of their different books. Most of it was they had series that I really enjoyed and wanted to finish. And then I kind of like this graph that they do where you can kind of see like when you read the most pages versus when you read the most books. And especially because like you can kind of see where you ebb and flow in time. Maybe, summertime's your more busy month, so you're not reading as many books then. But I think it's really cool to see because a lot of times I'll read a lot of books, but maybe it's not as many pages, or like I read a smaller amount of books, but they're like 900-page books. So I think it's cool to be able to see the difference and see kind of like throughout the year how your reading ebbs and flows. And then I didn't rate anything star-wise, just because it would have been too hard to have to go back through this year and rate everything. So that's just kind of the breakdown of what I read this year. And I read 103 books, which I think is pretty crazy because I didn't even think I was going to break 100 this year. And I read 103, which makes me feel really good, not going to lie. So now that we've kind of taken a peek at what my most commonly read genres and such and so forth were for the year, let's go on to actually talk about some of my favorite books that I read this year. And you can see if the genres follow the stats of Storygraph. And I'll leave Storygraph down below because you guys can follow me there and see what I'm currently reading, what I've already finished reading for the month/year, and what my ratings are if you want to get a sneak peek before my videos come out. But let's go talk about my favorite books for the year. Alrighty guys, so now that we've gone through the statistics of my year and what that looked like, I'm actually going to show you guys what my favorite books of the year were and what my most disappointing books of the year were. So I tried to keep my favorite books to 10, and I'm counting a series as one book, which might be cheating, but I don't care. I'm doing it anyways. So first off, we're going to start with, I guess, should I do backwards order or forwards order? Choices. Okay. I'm just going to go at random. And I will link all of my actual like in-depth reading wrap-up reviews in the description box below. So first on this list is Fourth Wing. So I didn't end up reading Fourth Wing until December. So this is kind of a little spoiler for you guys because my reading wrap-up for December hasn't come out yet. But I loved Fourth Wing to death. It just, like, this was a 6-star read in my opinion. It had everything I wanted. There was witty banter, there was action. The main character, even though she's, like, super frail, is really, like, she's a bad bee in my opinion. Like, you know, she is just, she's plowing through. She's knowing what she's doing and she's plowing through, and I love it. And like I like the dragons and how they can like actually communicate with them, and there's all these kinds of rules. And so like I cried at the end of this book. And I remember, and I'll probably talk about it again in my reading wrap up. I'm reading this book. I get to the last page, realize what it says is on the last page, scream, shut my book so hard that it scared Bean inside her cage because I was freaking out so bad. So highly recommend Fourth Wing if you like fantasy, if you like dragons, if you just like sarcastic witty banter between the main characters' love interest. So definitely give it 6 out of 5. Like this is like, I think this is my favorite book I read this year. Period. End of story. Favorite book I read this year. The next, oh, these are all so good. Okay, so next we'll do Rhapsodic. So Rhapsodic also was a 5-star read for me in my opinion. It had the same witty banter between the main love interests, and in my opinion the first book out of the series is the best book, and then I think I rated the last book really high as well. So personally the first book is my favorite. Just the relationship between Callie and Des is like super just, you know, sarcastic, witty. He'll do anything for her. And she's also another main character who like knows how to take care of herself, which I really appreciate. So I also recommend if you like fantasy and romance, because this has to deal with the Fae, and essentially Desmond and Callie knew each other for a really long time, and Desmond is called the Bargainer, and he will grant people like favors and stuff, but then they owe him, and he eventually calls in like his favors, and so she's been collecting his favors and IOUs for a very, very, very long time, and you go through their relationship, but when he finally decides to collect on those favors. Next, who saw this coming? Six of Crows. Both the first and the second book, in my opinion, are 5-star reads. Like, honestly, I could maybe verge it onto 6-star after, like, going back through all of my books that I've read this year. Like, this to me sticks out like Fourth Wing sticks out. And so, like, just the found family between everybody here. You have Kaz. He is, like, almost the leader of a gang at this point, and he has to round up a bunch of other criminals to steal something from this impenetrable fortress, and everybody has their role, everybody has their piece, and there's just a lot of blindsiding that happens in this book, and it's so cinematic, and you have some complicated relationships going on, and just the way this book is written, I feel like I'm watching a movie, not reading a book, which is hard in my opinion to do, because even if you have a really good imagination and being able to imagine things, just being able to like see it as a book or like a movie instead of just a book when you're reading, I feel like is very hard to do with writing, and I think that she did this very, very well. Next I have Sarah Penner and the London Seance Society. So I think this was another 5-star read of mine. You have a gay little relationship in here, but I didn't expect it to end the way that it did end, and I think she did a really good job of setting you up to feel one way about the main character's sister who's dead, and you're kind of like trying to track down who killed her and why things were happening the way they were happening in this book. And it also has that paranormal kind of aspect to it as well. And then you have the murder mystery, of course. And so I really like this book as well. So if you like murder mysteries, if you like having little fun gay relationships, and just the thrill of it all, and it's set in like old-timey London too, like 1800 London. So next is Aragon, of course, which I actually literally like 10 minutes before this, apparently Disney Plus is doing a TV show of this, and eventually I'm going to do a YouTube video comparing books to media. And like in my little journey, because I've already started like watching stuff to like prep for that video, I have found that movie adaptations pretty much suck compared to the books. However, TV adaptations are a lot better, and I think that's just because you get more time to like actually hit all the plot points. And I had some curiosities going on with that I'll express in that video, so stay tuned. I don't know when I'm putting that video out, but that'll be coming eventually in the new year. But Aragon, this is a classic to me, in my opinion. Like, if you like fantasy, if you like dragons, you probably read this when you were like in middle school. I mean, I guess if you're my age, because I think that's when I read it. And I'm in my mid-20s, so around there. But Aragon finds this egg out in the middle of the spine, which is like the spooky season, and you end up finding out that he's rescued a dragon, and he's a dragon rider, and you're going on his journey of him going through that stage of life. And this is also a series which I like all the books in that series. Personally, I think they all are really good and done really well. Next is A Discovery of Witches, which here you have Diana Bishop, who is a scholar. She's also a witch by birthright, but she doesn't like using magic at all. And so she kind of like shuns it. And one day while she's in the library, this magic book comes to her. And instead of not touching it because it's magic, she's like, whatever, I'm going to ignore it and I'm just going to look at it for what it is. And that sets off a whole giant escapade of all these creatures coming after her because everybody wants the book. And she ends up meeting and eventually falling in love with Matthew de Clermont. And you go through their lives together having to deal with this issue for the next 2 books. So I also really like this book. I don't remember what I rated this one, but like I said, I'm going to link all of my reading wrap-up videos down below that these were in. Next is Beach Read by Emily Henry. This was the book that made me really enjoy just pure romance. Because most of my books that I've read, if you can't tell up to this point, are like fantasy, murder mystery type, and they have like touchings of romance in them, but like it's not the main plot point. Whereas in Beach Read, I would say this is a romance book. If you've ever read one, especially for Emily Henry, she writes fantasy pretty exclusively, I think. But in this, you have Gus and you have January, and they have kind of been rivals all of their lives. They both write books, and January goes back to her dad's second home after he dies, and she's like cleaning out his life there, and she's supposed to be writing a romance book. And her dad, she finds out that her dad was cheating on her mom at one point. Well, read the book for better, because I don't want to ruin it in this video, but she finds out that her dad was with another woman at some point, and like it ruins her outlook on love. She's like, I can't write a love book anymore ever again, because like her parents were like the people to emulate for relationships. And Gus and her do a little challenge where they both have to write each other's like genre, and the first person to write a book by the end of the summer and get it published wins. And they end up kind of falling in love along the way. This was a 5-star book for me as well. I couldn't put it down. I wanted to read it so bad. I think I finished it in like a day, and it was just so good, so absolutely good. And then it made me want to read everything else that Emily Henry's ever written. So next is Warriors Into the Wild. So this series was just near and dear to my heart because I just never finished it. And I like the aspect of like, I like having animal main characters. and like following animal stories in that way too. And I think it's a really fun dynamic to have this house cat go into the wild and join these four clans of cats that live in the wild, and just getting to see, like, I think Aaron Hunter does a really good job of setting up like the law, the lore, like for this book, and just really, really good world building. Which is really, really good world building. In fact, so good that there's for sure at least two other spin-off series from this that I kind of want to read, but I also kind of don't, because while they aren't very long books, the series are usually like 6 books, I think. So I don't know if I'll get to that this year. Maybe I'll add it on the list for eventually, but she does have more books that are like that. And if you have kids, I think this is a great kids series for like actual kids too. So next is Inkheart. This, once again, another fantasy, just really good world building, and just a callback to my childhood and reading it in middle school and high school and never finishing it for whatever reason. And in here you have Maggie's father, who can read characters out of books, and he did it a really, really long time ago when she was a baby. And the characters that he read out that night, her mother, for every person he reads out of a book, someone has to go back. And her mother ended up being forced to go back into the book, and all of the characters that he brought out want to go back, but he can't read someone back, unfortunately. And so they have been like hunting him for years and years and years and years, and finally they catch up to him. And this goes through Maggie finding out what actually happened to her mom, how to save her dad, and then the next couple books are them being in the actual books themselves. So I highly recommend if you like fantasy, and there's actually a few different point plots of romance in here, and there's kind of like a little love triangle with Maggie in the third book, so I do recommend. Alrighty, next series I have, this is a big series. They are big books in the series, but it's the Septimus Heap series. This series, even though they are really big books, I wanted to keep reading them and reading them and reading them and reading them, and each book is very unique, and I feel like still furthers like the original plot and like original main theme throughout the series. And if you like magic, if you like dragons, because there's a dragon in here too, this is just good fantasy, good fiction, and I really did enjoy reading all of these books, even though they were all super long. And then the last books that are in my best book category for the year is the May Bird trilogy. So once again, if you like fantasy, this one has more paranormal kind of spooky elements to it. This is great for you. It's 3 books. They're all really small. Like, these 3 books are pretty much the size of a Septimus Heap book almost. The first one. But May Bird is a girl in a very, very small town, and all she has is her naked cat with her, who is her cute little sidekick, and she ends up going to the ever after, which is like the afterlife and where you go when you die. And before she goes, she can see ghosts, and she's just never been able to acknowledge it and like deal with it. And so she ends up having to go through the ever after and figure out how to get back home. She's being chased by the boogeyman because humans aren't allowed in ever after anymore, and especially neither are animals or cats. And it's just good fantasy, fiction, thrill, adventure chasing, just so good. And all of these books, like how I picked my best of books this year was I just thought about this year as a whole, and I was like, what books really stick out as like books that I enjoyed this year, books that I liked reading this year, and these are those books. So now we will move on to books that I didn't like this year, and not necessarily that I didn't like this year, but just either weren't what I expected, or like they were really disappointing in how they turned out, or like I had really high hopes for them and they let me down. And I actually only have two of the books that I want to talk about, because the other books I sold, because I'm trying to do better this year about, if I buy a book, I read said book, and I never think that I'm ever going to read it again, or I hate it, then I actually get rid of it. I either donate it. Well, first I try to sell it, because I would like to recoup some money and then buy more books with said money. But if I can't sell it, because like selling books back to people is kind of hard, I just donate them. And actually, I think what I'm going to start doing this year is, if I can't sell them back, because normally I sell mine back at half price books, and normally I'm just like, oh, we'll donate them because I don't want to deal with it. However, instead of donating it to them, because they could probably just be reselling them and not actually donating them, I'm going to donate them to my local bookstore, because they will resell them. I don't think they're paying people for their used books, but I would rather support like a local hometown bookstore than the big corporations, even though I buy all my books from big corporations, I guess. Except for I did buy some stuff from her bookstore in December. But, so I think I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I have 5 books that are on the list of just / series that were just disappointing, not what I expected, blah, blah, blah. So I will start out with the first 2 that I have. So I have The Lost Apothecary by Sarah Penner. And you might be thinking, Kristen, didn't you put her other book in your best book of the year category? I did. And that's what kind of like, this hurts my soul. Because I read The London Seance Society first, and then I read this book. But this one, it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. You get the split point of view of like someone in modern times and like the old like apothecary times, and having to go through what happened to the old apothecary and how you end up getting to the glass vial that the modern day person ended up finding, and like is the catalyst for her trying to figure out what happened to this apothecary, what it was, etc. And also dealing with the fact that the main character found out that she was being cheated on before she went on this vacation, and just, you know, kind of dealing with that turmoil as well. I just thought it was going to be better. I didn't really realize that it was going to be split between the past and the present, and because I thought it was more just going to be like, you were going to get like, I don't know, like I thought that the main character would like figure out like some giant murder, and then you would like go back in time and then see that murder played out, specifically dealing with the apothecary. I don't really know. All I know is it wasn't as good as I thought it was going to be at all, and I really didn't like the writing in this one. Next is 5 Survive, and this was just, the plot took forever to actually get anywhere good in this book, in my opinion. Like, I think I had to get 3/4 of the way through this book, 2/3 of the way through this book, for them to finally start telling secrets and like it actually becoming relevant to why they're stuck in the RV. And then Red's best friend's older brother, I hated his writing. And I know that he was written specifically to make you hate him. But Holly Jackson did her job so good that I hated reading this book, because I hated having to deal with that character. And so it just, and then like it got super like, I mean, the ending in this book, great, phenomenal. But like just the process of getting there was so blasé that I was just like, whatever. So like the other books that are on this list that I've already sold back, I will put a photo up here. The first we're going to talk about is Then She Was Gone. I just found that the plot point was like really predictable. Like the big twist I already had predicted, and on top of that I just felt like the story was kind of whatever, and like it kind of took a while to get there and get anything kind of meaningful out of it. And so I just was like, it's whatever. Like, I would never read it again, in my opinion. Like, I read it, it's over with, it is what it is. So it was just blase. Just blase. And then The Graveyard Book. I actively did not like this book. I just felt like it jumped around a lot in terms of like timelines, like and age, like just all of a sudden he'd be a different age. Like you didn't really start learning about the secret society until like the last like quarter of the book, and even then it really wasn't like a great explanation in my point for why they were trying to kill this kid. And then like there's not a whole lot that actually happens in the book, in my opinion. Like, he goes on a couple of adventures, but like not a lot actually happens to this kid in the graveyard. And then like when he actually tries to kill him, it's just kind of whatever. And then at the very end, I could not understand, because in my brain when I was reading it, the lady in gray was like the representation of like death. Like, she's like the Grim Reaper almost, I guess is the way I took it. But then even though he lives, he goes away with the gray lady? So did he actually die? I don't know. Maybe I just am not good at reading in between the lines. But I didn't like this book. I didn't like this book. It wasn't for me. If it is for you, if any of the books that I don't like are your favorite books, don't change your opinions about it. Like, you like what you like. They weren't for me, is all. You know, they just weren't for me. And then the last series that I'm going to talk about is the Last Dragon series, or the Last Dragon Chronicles. And this was a series that I had really high hopes for. Like, the first book in the series, I was like, I started off reading the third way back when, and then I was like, all right, well, I need to get all the books in the series and like actually start from the beginning. And like the first book had high hopes. I was like, okay, yeah, this could be a good series. And then the second book was like fine. I hated the third book, which was the book that actually got me to like the series. Like, I guess like rereading it, because I hadn't read it in a really long time, I was just like, this sucks. Like, it was hard for me to get through. Or maybe it wasn't the third book that I hated, but like, I think I still liked it in the end, but it was hard to get through. And then like the fourth book and the fifth book just completely out of nowhere, like left turn things. And I was like, just why? And then I think the last book was actually like kind of good again, but it was a 7-book series, and I was like, this is just taking up space on my bookshelf. This is just a waste on my bookshelf. I don't want it. I'm not going to read it again, because I had to drag myself through it. Like, I don't want to deal with it. So I did end up selling it. So those are the 5 book/series of the year that I just did not like. You know, they just weren't my cup of tea. So let me know what you guys think about any of these books. Have you read them? Have you not read them? Are they on your to be read list? Do you agree with my opinion? Have I convinced you to read any of these books? Let me know in the comments down below, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.